Welcome to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict. And Jerry, why do we do this show?
Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to people who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and drugs. And just as important, family members, we know you suffer tremendously. We know you have a lot of questions, and that's what this is all about, to bring you some hopeful answers. And if God's good grace, we'll bring you a solution to this dilemma.
All right, we have a YouTube channel. If you've missed prior episodes, feel free to go there. It's youtube.com/Trudge the Road Radio, or you could just type Trudge the Road Radio into your search engine. We also have a Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, Trudge the Road Radio, and then like us. Plus, our Twitter account is @TTR Show. We've got Tim coming up in just a few minutes.
Oh, he's great. Tim's great. Jersey guy, a real Jersey guy.
He's a very emotional guy, and he's strong, and no matter what emotion he's displaying, and he's got a great story that he's going to be sharing with us, and I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Speaking of great stories, I think it's episode 16. Is that with Tara? With Tara Connor?
17.
Number 17, Tara, Miss USA 2006. Remarkable story. Just a wonderful young lady. And if you haven't had a chance to check out that episode, please do, because I know you'll enjoy it immensely.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in Trudge the Road Radio. We're going to start the show by talking about addictions, switching addictions. I was a drunk, for lack of a better term, throughout the entire 80s. I first got drunk back in 1978 when I was a young lad at 14 and got trashed. Very first time. I can tell you what I drank. That's how significant that day was for me, that I remember. I remember I drank 5 Miller High Lifes and 2 Pabst Blue Ribbon beers. 7 beers at 14, and I was in the bushes at the neighbor's house at that point, throwing my guts up. And I remember my friend taking me home. I remember coming to the house and my mom standing at the door telling me I smelled like a brewery, go to bed, and being hungover the next day and feeling like, you know what? I might feel like crap right now, but I'm going to do this again.
Oh, sure.
And I did. I did for the next 11 years or so, and then I switched addictions, and I found crystal meth. Crystal meth and cocaine, fell in love with it, never thought about drinking again. To this day, I have no desire to drink. However, I still in a daily struggle with my battle against drug addiction. Methamphetamines or cocaine, anything that goes fast, anything where I can be up all hours of the night for 7 days in a row to share my crazy with the world. But I've got over 11 years of sobriety now and recovery, and I plan on going for 11 more years.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, well, the way it stands today, but it's one day at a time.
It's, the book describes the real alcoholic, and that is certainly me, the real alcoholic. But, I'm a baby boomer also, and just within our culture was a lot of drugs. And I, too, did a lot of drugs, but they were there for a little bit different reason. They were there to make the alcohol better, and especially, things like cocaine, because with cocaine, I could drink a lot more.
Sure.
I could stay up a lot longer, and I was more articulate, and I was more handsome, and I was certainly funnier, all of those things, but it made the booze so much better, and that's why I took drugs to go along with the alcohol. But, when everything was else gone and I'm on the streets living there, it's just the alcohol that I'm focused on. Obviously, I can't afford the drugs, but the alcohol was always there. Real alcoholic here.
Well, we talk about where we were and where we are today. So what happens when you get sober? Do you switch addictions again? A lot of people do, and there are things that you need to be cognizant about. I know when I switched addictions, after I got clean and sober off the crystal meth and the cocaine and everything else that came along with it, I started loving food. Yeah. And I mean loving food. Because I think for one reason is I could actually taste food again. Yeah. So it tasted wonderful. Sure. Plus, and I think I've heard you say this before, it made me happy. It filled a need for me.
It's we're looking for something on the outside to make us feel good on the inside. And food might, satisfy that for a while. But again, we're trying to answer an emotional issue with something that is physical. It's not going to work. It's that hole in the soul that we're talking about. And addiction is addiction addiction, whether, I'm addicted to methamphetamines or to alcohol, that disease is just the same. The problem is that we can get some really bad habits, and overeating was certainly one of mine. I, as you know, showed up at treatment centers on a regular basis, and I would show up at 170, 175 pounds, and I'd pick up my 60-day chip at 240, because I would, find myself at the buffet table and stand there because it made me feel better. Now I've known people within recovery, and I have friends in recovery who have become so physically fit that they literally could be in the Olympics. I mean, they just become magnificent and do triathlons and things of that nature. But does it solve the problem? What's it like there in the pit of that stomach, that hole in the soul? Did all of that exercise fix that? And the answer is always no, to the point, too, that they can become just as ill emotionally from this disease in all that great physical fitness because they put all their time into that and didn't deal with that disease. And I said, did it make it better? All that exercise, did it fill that hole in the soul? No, man, I want to hang myself from this Bowflex. And I've seen the exact same thing happen with people who've made a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but put a total focus on making a ton of money. And I've seen them make a ton of money, get kind of rich kind of fast. And I've asked them, did it fix it? Did it fix that hole right there in the stomach? That feeling? Did all that money take care of it? No. I wanted to shoot myself on my yacht. It won't fix it. This is an inside job. We can't look for something on the outside to make us feel better on the inside. Now, we can work hard and we can make some money and we can do some great things and we can get into shape and we can feel better, but it can't be the focus of our recovery. This is a spiritual path, and we use the 12 steps, which are a blueprint for behavior for us to be able to accomplish what we're really looking for and always been looking for, and that's peace of mind.
Yeah, you talk about the blueprint for behavior. That's what the 12 steps are. A lot of people go, oh, yeah, that AA stuff. Well, regardless of whether you're using them for alcohol or drugs, in my case, it is a blueprint for behavior.
For living,
and
yes.
living.
Right.
And that is the key, because one of the things we are trying to find is balance. Balance in our life right now. Why you laugh when I say that?
Because it'll never happen.
I know, but that doesn't mean you don't start striving for it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And moderation is the key.
What's that word? What? I'm not familiar with that word.
Moderation, yeah.
Right.
But there's a lot of things like overeating. We talk about spending
that can be a problem
when it comes to money. And I go through this on a daily basis. I went through this morning. I can't just stop and get a cup of coffee. I had already eaten breakfast, but I felt compelled to walk over there and get myself an egg and sausage and cheese croissant. Why did I feel like doing it?
Because you were compelled.
I was compelled. I know. And then I'm going to have to go home and I'm going to have to explain to the CFO of my family, which is my wife, the chief financial officer, and she's going to look at the bank account and goes, why did you drop $7 at this convenience store and then $11 at this next convenience store? By the time you went here to record the show and left there and got home, you spent $28. What? On what? Well, I felt like I wanted the beef jerky and I couldn't eat the beef jerky without getting myself a giant, tall
So you're
soda.
Rationalizing on top of everything.
Exactly. So this is something you have to watch out. And the one thing that I really wanted to bring up is romance, where people have a desire to indulge or overindulge when you first get sober into romance.
Yeah, let's just call it what it is. Can I become addicted to another person? You most certainly can, and it's dangerous. It's they've got some. You'll hear some crazy things when you come into AA. You'll hear things like no major decisions within the first year of recovery. Have you taken a look at that third step? I mean, that's a big decision. But they talk about staying out of relationships, and again, it's the broken heart. It's just, as you said, you cannot come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous without a broken heart. Everybody has that. And to think that you'll be able to play in the game of love with a broken heart is ridiculous. Just like an athlete who's hurt on the injured reserve list, they can't play until they get better. And we want you to get better. And it was brought up to me early in recovery that I'm not going to make it because, Jerry, look at your record, look at your record, look at your record. I would become involved in a very unhealthy relationship. And it was simply put to me as this, and it's true, and I don't know why, but if there were 10 pretty young ladies in the room here right now, and I could have never met them, don't know them, and I could choose one to go out to dinner in the movies with, like a magnet, I'll go right to the crazy one, because that's what I like, crazy, and that's not good behavior. And of course, over the years, that has gotten better. We can even look at Sigmund Freud, the godfather of modern-day psychotherapy, and his definition of mental health. And still well accepted within the therapeutic community today. You're considered mentally healthy if you work, love, and play in equivalent amounts, and that would, be this balance thing. Well, do you know anybody? In recovery who even,
No.
Well, and that's okay. We'll never achieve it, and it doesn't make any difference because we have the gift of serenity. That is the grace that we have that will enable us to be able to. And frankly, if everybody got mentally healthy within the recovering community, it wouldn't be fun anymore. It just wouldn't be fun. And one thing is always out of whack. It's usually too much work and very little play. And play is extremely important for our mental health, and that can be tied into, as you were talking about earlier, to exercise. You pick up golf, you start bowling, doing things of this nature. God is your father. Now, if you're a parent out there, if you're like me and you're a dad, nothing makes me happier than when I see Chelsea and my granddaughter Mia playing and like having a good time at the beach. It just thrills me, and I believe that God, as I choose to understand him, feels the same way when we're recreating. There's his kids having a good time. It makes him feel good, and it is good for us. But we need to sometimes incorporate that into our lives. Learn to go out there and play and do something because we don't know how. We're alcoholics and drug addicts. We don't know how to play. We don't know how to have fun. Automatically say, how do we have fun? Well, somebody give me some blow.
Right.
That's what I need to have. We got to learn, and start small. Try things twice. That was the way I was taught to take an endeavor and do it 2 times because just as alcoholics, we're just it's our makeup to hate it the first time, but that second time, sometimes we think that, this might be kind of fun. This might be kind of interesting. If you don't like it the second time, move on to something else, but get out there and try and learn how to play because it's such an important part of your life. And when you do learn, it just makes life that much better. And what are we looking for? Happy, joyous, and free. What are we looking for? Peace of mind. This plays a significant role in that path, but we got to learn it. It's important, but it's fun. And that word fun, when you feel it, when you enjoy it, you may be, 6 months sober and you're 50 years old, and maybe for the first time in your life, you're going to have this strange feeling at the bowling alley. What is coming over me? You're having fun. You're having fun. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a buzz. You're going to love it, but you got to go out there and work for it a little bit, and as you said, Rich, shoot for it, shoot for that work, love, and play all to be in equivalent amounts.
Why not?
Why not? But in the meantime, don't worry about it either. We've got that serenity. It's the gift. It's the grace that we've got here.
Tim is coming up next. Tim is a very compelling individual, and you are going to love his story. Jerry's going to sit down with him. It's coming up next on Trudge the Road, which is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, Caron.org. That's CARON.org. Jerry and Tim coming up next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry sits down and talks to Tim, who has a very compelling and emotional story about how he came to find sobriety in the rooms of AA. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new face of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Trudge the Road. My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic, and Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, with offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 800-854-6023 or by going to their website, which is Caron.org. That's CARON.org. We highly recommend that you do. Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to folks folks who suffer from the disease of addiction, and addiction to drugs and alcohol. And every bit as important, of course, is the family members. And we know you've got a lot of questions, and we hope to, on this program, provide some answers to you. And again, with God's good grace, provide a solution to the dilemma that you face. We understand, and I think that that's most important. We understand how you, the family member, feels, and we understand your pain if you have this disease. And we're very honored to have a friend of mine here with us, Tim. Tim, welcome to Trudge the Road, man.
Good morning. Thank you.
I love Tim. You're from Jersey, man, and I told you before, in New Jersey, they'll love you out loud. You know, it's a great state, and there's such great recovery, and you bring it with you today, and man, we do appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
You're a big part of AA, and I think that that's hugely important for everybody who's concerned with this program. And you know, what got us here is always a very interesting part, and to be able to also follow up and see where we are today. But we all have a story, and you have one that's not unique, but it's yours, and we'd like to find out, you know, what happened.
What happened, Jerry? I'd been drinking for a long time, you know, and every day, and I knew I was done, and I had the family history: my dad, my brother, my other brother, my sister, and I knew I was done, and I made the decision to stop drinking. Mm-hmm. And had made the decision 3 years prior to that to stop taking cocaine. Mm-hmm. And I just did. You know, movie stars were going to Betty Ford, but I stopped, you know, because I'm a tough guy.
You're from Jersey, man.
Yeah, right. You know? And I couldn't stop. And I hadn't promised anybody but me. And I'd, you know, every morning for a number of months, I'd get up, I'd look in the mirror, I'd, you know, shower and shave, here we go. You know, today's the day, Timmy. You're not going to drink today. You know, and I'd watch my brother bounce in and out of rehabs for half a dozen years, and I heard that one day at a time thing. So I knew it's just for today, you know, and I couldn't do it. You know, and I found myself drinking earlier and earlier every day. The more determined I was, it seemed like the early, you know, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You know, I remember walking into a bar at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely. You know, let me just
have a drink.
Let me take you back, you know, to that morning when you woke up, you know, and the head is on fire. And today you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. You know, at that moment, and you and I both know this. You're telling the absolute truth. I mean, there's no doubt. You could be, as we said, on the best lie detector the FBI has got. It's going to come out true.
Right. Yep.
And that's the insanity of the disease. 11 o'clock in the morning, then you're in the bar again.
Right. Yep. Yeah. You know, it was in that period. Early in that 6-month period, before I had my last drink, my daughter was about 3.5 at the time, my oldest daughter, and she come running down. I come home, she come running down the hall. She jumped into my arms, you know, which was when we're a family of huggers. Sure. And just as she started to squeeze, she started to wriggle right out again. You know, she jumped out of my arms. She ran down the hall. She said, "I'll get Daddy's beer." You know.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, she knew two things. I wanted a hug and I wanted a beer.
Your connectedness was really based on that.
Yeah. You know, and I knew that was not cool. Yeah, I knew, you know, and I wouldn't even look at my wife because I didn't want to see what her, you know, the look on her face, because I didn't know what her reaction was going to be. I knew what my reaction was. You know, this isn't cool. You know, that's what she knew about Dad. You know.
Kind of a dark place to be.
Kind of, you know. I've said before, you know, I've you know, I still had my job, I still had my house, still had my family. Not sure I wanted any of them. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember in that time period thinking about my father dying all alone. You know, in a cheap little L studio in the basement of a senior citizens high-rise in Elizabeth, New Jersey. You know, and he got that free because he was close to the boiler, and he could hear the alarm ring if something went wrong with the boiler, and he could call. You know, and I remember thinking that might be nice. Wow, to be alone in a little place like that, you know, and just drink.
The loneliness that they call this, the disease of loneliness,
right?
And, you know, I think that pretty well defines it. You know, living in your head. It's you know, you still had the house, you still, you know, had the job, things of that nature. I, on the other hand, you know, was living on the streets.
Right.
But there's no difference because Skid Row is a state of mind.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're living in a mansion or if you're living where I happen to be, which was a tree. That's a story for another time. it's all the same that's going on in between those ears. You know, all right, desperation. You're at that point, that jumping off point. Have to do something. What's going through your head when you can't stop, when you can't not have that drink?
You're just like your dad, you know. And that's been said to me too, you know. And while I was attracted to, you know, that being alone, I didn't want to be like my dad, you know, because I remember feeling cheated as a kid, growing up without my dad. He ran away from home when I was an infant. I'm the youngest of 7. You know, and he didn't run away from home. He had no choice. We got in front of the drink. You know, I know that now as a recovering alcoholic. You know, I'm sure when he left the house in the morning, he fully intended to come straight home from work because he promised his wife, my mother, that he would do that. You know, and that was true at 7 o'clock in the morning,
Absolutely.
just like it was true when I told myself I wasn't going to drink that day. You know, and I didn't want my kids, my daughters, to have the same experience that I had, you know. And let's face it, you know, 1960, when my father ran away from home, it was very unusual in where we lived. I was, in fact, all through elementary school, I was the only kid in school who didn't have dad in the house.
Right. Right.
You know, it was unusual.
I grew up in a traditional Irish Catholic culture, and it was unheard of. I mean, divorce and or separation of anything of that nature.
Right.
Other than death, you know, we stuck together.
Right.
So I understand that.
Right. Yeah. My mother didn't divorce my dad until 25 years after.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, and that was at the advice of her parish priest.
Really.
Because she had worked pretty hard to hang on to the house and keep us all together, you know. And the priest said to her, you know, Genevieve, God forbid you get run over by a bus, you know, your husband's name is on that deed. He gets the house.
Right.
You know, she didn't want that to happen.
I can understand.
You know? Yeah.
Family disease. Tell us a little bit about how it sounds like it ravaged your family.
Yeah. Yeah. On the one hand, it ravaged our family. On the other hand, you know, we didn't talk about it. You know, my mother was willing to say my dad was an alcoholic. You know, we were under strict instructions that if anybody asked, "Hey, where's your dad?" You know, you have to go ask my mother.
Right.
You know, of course, nobody ever had the nuts to do that. You know, but you know, like my Uncle Ray, he went to work every day. My Uncle Richie, you know, he had, you know, 5 daughters to support. He worked hard. You know, that was just the words we used to describe their alcoholism.
Right.
You know, my brother Larry died when I was the year I got my 1-year coin. The weekend I got my 1-year coin, my brother Larry called me. Now, he was 10 years older than me. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his. He was my, you know, I toasted him at his wedding as my, you know, my big brother. My father figure, my best man, you know, and he was. And he told me that that weekend I got my 1-year coin. He told me he had liver cancer, you know, and it didn't look good, you know. And that was May, and he died on Thanksgiving Day.
Wow.
You know? And that was directly attributable to his drinking and drugging.
Right, right. But you know, I just bring it to the point of everybody listening that this is a family disease. You know, I have a very similar pathology in my life, in my family, and it's not that uncommon, and it does somewhat answer some of the questions about the genetics and how this is inherited. Was it that moment with your daughter? Was it that moment when, you know, she squirmed away from you and ran to get the beer because that was the connectedness you had, that it was that jumping off point, or that moment of clarity, whatever, you know, the big book describes it in several different ways. Was that it, or was there another? What was it that sparked the key to get help? I don't. You know what? I hadn't thought about that incident in a while, and I don't know why I thought about it this morning. I spent the day painting the bedroom in her apartment down in Philly yesterday, so we spent some time together. You know, that was one of them. You know, there was a place I used to go to. We were living in the Poconos, and most of my work was in New Jersey, and so I'd be coming back across Route 80 and through the Delaware Water Gap, and you know, I spent a lot of time driving every day as part of my job, which is not very good for someone who's either drinking or trying not to drink. It's, you know, way too much time alone to think. And before cell phones, I couldn't even call somebody and tell them how wacky I was thinking. But there was a spot where I could pull off and
stick my feet in the Delaware River, you know, and I would pull over because I'm a smart guy, and with the idea that if I could just sit here and I'll be able to figure this out, you know, if I can think enough, you know, I'd sit there and figure it out, you know, and it would come to me, you know. It's the drinking, Timmy, you know. It's the drinking. If you could just stop drinking, you know, and you know, I would develop a resolve sitting there with my feet, you know. I would get some kind of peace sitting there with my feet in the water. I would develop some resolve, and I'd get up, and I had a piece of cardboard in the trunk so I could sit on the edge of the river. I was a suit and tie job, and I'd get back in the car, and I'd head home. And as I was driving up the mountain, I'd think to myself, I'm going to smoke a half a joint, you know, and that was it, you know. And I'd stop at the bar, and I wouldn't go home till, I'd call my wife from the payphone, you know, and say, I'm gonna stop at the Legion, you know, American Legion, and I'm just gonna have, you know, one, maybe two, and I'll be home at 6:30. You know, 9 o'clock at night, I'm racing down the road at 70 miles an hour because if I drive fast enough, I can get home on time. That's how wacky my thinking was.
The insanity of the disease is the disaster that we face on a daily basis when we're drinking, on a daily basis. And it is tragic. But there is another side, and you did find that, and we want to hear about that. And thank you very much, Tim, for being here. Would you share with us, again, if you can hang around for just a couple of secs? Tim's going to be back, and we'll find out about recovery and about the miracle, and you're going to enjoy that immensely. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. Listen, if you're concerned about yourself or there's a loved one, call this phone number. It's 800-854-6023. Or go to the website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. And this is Trudge the Road, and we'll be back in just a moment on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry continues his discussion with Tim, and I would recommend keeping the box of tissues out because his story is honest and emotional. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Trudge the Road. I'm Jerry, a sober alcoholic, and Trudge the Road is brought to you by Caron Treatment Centers, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. They've got treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, in Florida, and in Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philly, and D.C., and you can reach them by calling 800-854-6023 or by going to their website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org, and they're wonderful people, and they'll help you. And that's what this is all about. Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to people suffering from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol, as well as family and friends. We know that you have a lot of questions. We know you've got a lot of pain, and we're going to try and answer some of those questions and do what we can to ease some of the suffering that you're going through, and with God's good grace, ultimately provide a solution to the dilemma you face with the disease of addiction. My friend Tim is here with me, and we're going to catch up with him from just a few minutes ago. First, man, thank you very much for being here and for being so open. We really do appreciate
You're
that
welcome.
Because we can see without eyes in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, it's that emotional connection that we have, and I know that that's happening with what you're saying today, and I really do appreciate that. Take us to the end. We want to know what was the final straw, what brought you into the world of recovery.
At the very end, I knew it was the drinking, and I knew I had to stop. And I finally, after 6 months of trying to stop on my own, I called my brother Pat. And he'd gotten to the point where he could tell almost how much I was drinking on the phone. And I never met a guy who had so many pots on the stove. Because I'd start talking, he'd say, "Oh, I got a pot on the stove, I'll call you later." Then he wouldn't call me back because he didn't want to talk to me when I was drunk.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And he started to hang up the phone, and I said, "Wait, stop." And he did. And I said, "Can we meet for coffee?" And he said, "Sure, when?" I said, "Tomorrow." And he said, "Okay." And we made a date, and we hung up. And 5 minutes went by, and I called him back, and I said, "Pat, would you take me to an AA meeting?" And I burst into tears. And I hung up the phone, and I started puking. And then I didn't go the next day because I didn't feel that bad. So I called him, and I said, "It's raining." He lived about 45 minutes away. And you can't drive in the rain. You know, you can drive in a snowstorm to get drunk, but you can't drive in the rain to get sober. You know? And I went a week later, and it was a speaker meeting, and they said, try not to compare yourself to the speaker, but try to identify with the story. And the speaker was a lady. It was the last week of April, 1992. It was an anniversary meeting, so everybody in the group was getting their coins, and I didn't know what was going on. I saw everybody pulling $1 out and putting it on the table. I'm in the basement of a Catholic church. So I know what that means, 50-50. So I got my dollar out. I'm looking around the room, I'm counting. There's like 70 people. I'm figuring I'm in for $35, And the next thought was, that's 4 cases of beer, because I was drinking Peel's Real Draft, and they were $9 a case. So if I win $35, that's 4 cases of beer. That's how I counted money. But anyway, the lady who spoke talked about how no matter where she lived, she always made friends with the guys that owned the bars. And I could identify with that, because you can knock on a bar that's been closed for an hour at 3 a.m. and get in if you're friends with the owner. And that's really all I remembered. And over the next 10 days, I did a little bit of drinking, and I went to a couple of meetings, and I joined the Kirkridge group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Shawneetown, Delaware on May 10th, 1992. On May 11th, I had my last drink, and on May 12th, I that's the day I count as my sober day. I think what happened in retrospect was that 6 months when I was trying to quit on my own, where I was saying, today's the day, Timmy, you're not going to drink today. Right. Patting myself on the back, urging, cheering myself on.
Self-will. Yeah.
That was a prayer.
Okay.
That was a prayer. I really wanted, I wanted to stop, and I think it was just accumulation.
All right, so you enter into the world of recovery here.
Man.
You've joined up. All right, tell us about your experience as you come into our wonderful organization. Was it what you expected?
You know what? I don't. It's interesting. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this.
I understand that, man. I absolutely do.
Yeah. My first sponsor called me. One of his nicknames was the hypothetical situation. Because I'd always say, "Well, what if?" I remember saying, that a man was going to have to toast his daughter at her wedding. I got a 15-month-old daughter and a 4-year-old daughter, and I'm thinking about
20 years from now.
Toast, I thought shut up and get in the car was step one, because I heard that more often than anything else. I had a million questions. What about, where are we going? What time are you getting back? Well, shut up and get in the car, Timmy.
Right.
I thought that was the first step. And they took me to meetings, and they listened to me ramble, and they just like that, they just nodded their head. That's what, they knew. Ed Gunnels, Ed said to me, he had this big old Cadillac, and that's how I found a Grapevine magazine. And this was the summertime. I got sober in May, doing my 90 and 90. And so it was still light out when you're going to meetings. And he had in the pocket of the behind the seat, he had Grapevine magazines. And he'd say, read, get that April Grapevine. That's got the answer to your question. He just wanted me to shut up for 5 minutes so he and Luke could talk about the Phillies, But Ed said to me early on, it was a couple weeks in, and like I told you, I went to my first meeting the last week of April. I had my last drink on May 11th. So it was a couple of weeks of drinking a little bit. Right. Now I know what I was doing. I was detoxing,
right.
And I said to Ed, about the only thing I figured out is if I go to a meeting, I'm probably not going to drink that day.
Right.
And he says, that's all you got to figure out for now. And he says, Timmy, just take our hand and come with us. You'll be all right. And that hit me like, whoa, and he was, about the age my father would have been if he was alive. So that was, like, just take our hand and come with us. You'll be okay. And that's what happened to me, And every day they'd say, okay, tomorrow meet us here, And the day after, okay, now on Thursday meet us here, And that's how I stayed sober, For 20 years, people have been telling me, okay, tomorrow meet us here. So far, it's working,
Wow.
Nobody's asked me to meet them in a crack house yet.
No. What about, all right, now, approaching the program, I mean, you come from a strong AA background, I know.
Yep.
And doing the steps, I mean, that's counterintuitive.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, right.
How did you face that? Obviously, with good sponsorship.
Well, and my sponsor Richie was he could have written a book just on the wacky stuff I came up with. But I remember in the Poconos where I got sober, it was kind of like an unwritten rule. You go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and they talked about it, At the end of 90 days, you go tell your story, because we had a lot of speaker meetings, you know, and you get about 20 minutes, and you make an appointment to do your 5th step. So I'm no dope. If I have an appointment to do my 5th step, that means I have to have written my 4th step. And my experience has been it takes many months and 2 very late nights to do a thorough 4th step, you know, or at least the first one, you know.
This is a fearless moral inventory of
Right,
oneself.
step 4, yeah, you know. Fearful, you
Yeah.
know, and dishonest was the first, you know, but it was as honest as I could be at the time.
I understand.
Yeah. He had me reading the first 3, every day I'd read either step 1 or step 2 or step 3 out of 12 and 12. Get the foundation going. Go to step meetings, as well as go to speaker meetings. We didn't have discussion meetings. There was one open discussion meeting on that list 20 years ago. Every other meeting was a topic or a speaker meeting where you read some literature,
Right.
You know, so it was interesting.
Well, even, you know,
All
in the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous, the speaker meeting didn't come along until 1960.
Yeah, imagine that.
Everything
Yep.
else was always, it was a step meeting or a
Yep.
speaker meeting.
Right,
Up
yeah,
until
yeah,
1960,
you know.
the discussion came.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I
Right.
think that's a great way
Yeah.
to get sober is
Right.
listening. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Go ahead, man. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's sure. But we're driving home one night from a meeting, and Richie says to me, I said to Richie, I said, you know what? We were talking about step 4. I got to, you know, I said, I don't want to do this. He said, that's okay, Timmy. I thought, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm out of this.
And I look over and he's got this like smile on his face because I'm looking at him in profile. He's driving the car. He's got like this smile on his face that seems kind of weird, you know? And he looks back at me and he goes, that's okay, Timmy. You don't have to want to do it, but you do have to do it, you know? And I didn't want to do it. I did not want to do it. And I am so glad. I was like 4 months sober. I am so glad he literally forced me to do that. You know, I say that, you know, because I think I might have been one of those guys that would have not done it if I could have gotten away with it. And those guys last X number of years, and you know, they either go crazy or they drink, you know, as a means to medicate the craziness. You know, and we did our 5th step after the Tuesday night step meeting. We stayed in the basement. He had the key. And when it was all over, we went outside and he had me burn all those papers. Right. And as they were burning, he said to me, Timmy, you don't ever have to be that man again. And the sense of relief and the sense of release and the
You're breathing the clean air of decency.
Oh, I tell you, yeah. And that comes back to me sometimes.
Oh, yeah, it does right now.
Now, yeah. And sometimes it comes back to me when I am being that man again. You know, when I'm back in that behavior. You know, I'll remember that. You know, it's like, whoa, okay. You know, I don't have to be that guy, but I can be. You know, that's a choice too.
Right.
You know,
it is.
Yeah, I got a chance to tell my story about 10 years or so ago for the first time with my wife in the room.
Wow.
All right. And wow. You know, and while I was telling my story, it's funny what comes out of your mouth. One of the things that came out of my mouth was, you know, the gratitude I had for my wife that she arranged my life, my home life, such that I had the time to give back to AA. You know, I was having a meal after a meeting when I was not quite 10 years sober. And a priest at the time was my sponsor. And he was sitting with us, and there was a bunch of people. My wife and my daughters had joined us. It was after the Friday night meeting. A lot of families would go. And somebody said something, and I laughed, and my buddy Jeff said, you got an evil laugh. And I said, I get that from my sponsor. You know? And my daughter was sitting across from me. She's 10, you know. Now, I had taken both of my daughters to speaker meetings when my wife was working, and they'd sit off in the corner and they'd color with their coloring books, whatever. And Caitlin says to me, why do you have a sponsor? I said, everybody in AA has a sponsor. She says, you're in AA? I go, well, yeah, what'd you think? Well, I know you go help set up chairs and make coffee and answer the phone when the new guys call, you know. Now, I'd been telling her, both of my daughters, all their lives, you know, since I got sober, I'm an alcoholic. I can't drink. I'm allergic to alcohol. The various different ways, you know, age appropriate all along, you know. But what she understood was the service part of it. What I was,
help,
you know, which
doing
was
for others.
Yeah, on the one hand, it was kind of cool, you know.
Right. It's very cool.
You know. So then a minute or two goes by, and she looks at me. She says, "Hey, Dad, do you have stories?
See, they know
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but when I was telling my story that time, boy, my wife, Linda, she really arranged, and she would, she'd keep me posted. And sometimes I had to travel with work and stuff. And, she just made it work so that I had the time,
Sure.
to do this kind of stuff. And you can tell I'm an emotional guy. People use the expression, he wears his heart on his sleeve. I wear mine on my face.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And you hear it in my voice.
Absolutely.
And I was speaking at a group anniversary down in South Jersey. My sponsor was supposed to go with me. He had to cancel because of a work thing at the last minute. And my youngest, Caitlin, says to me, can I go with you? And this was only a couple of years ago. And she was about 20 and 18, whatever. I said, sure. So now I'm at the podium, big group, the whole routine. And I realized, I forgot my handkerchief. And a gentleman always carries a handkerchief. That's what, according to my mom. And I'm an emotional guy. I'm gonna be dabbing at my eyes and blowing my nose when I'm telling my story. So a couple of minutes into it, somebody gets out of their seat, walks back into the kitchen. You can see right through this church basement into the kitchen, pulls a couple of paper towels off the roll, walks right up the middle aisle. A couple of people are chuckling, hands me the paper towels, walks back, get a little bit of laughter in the room. And I blow my nose and wipe my eyes. And so I'm telling my story. And a couple of times during the course of my tale, I glance over at my daughter, and she's kind of wide-eyed, and I'm telling her the sanitized version, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't tell her about the time that it dawned on me that container of baby wipes had alcohol in it. Mm-hmm. And in spite of the fact that I had John Jameson's in the cabinet, I wondered what that tasted like.
I understand that.
I didn't tell her about the time I wondered what Ajax was like, because I had just made that girl snort some. I wonder I didn't tell her that part, and still she's got those bug eyes going, So I'm kind of wrapping up my story, and I see this kid pop up, goes back in the kitchen, grabs a couple of paper towels, starts coming up the aisle, and I'm looking. I still got another paper towel. I haven't even touched it yet, And he gets about 2/3 of the way up the aisle, and he leans over and he hands them to my daughter, Caitlin, because she needs them. And he saw that, It's like, wow, because I was at the part of the story where I was talking about, I got to learn how to be a dad. I got to look both of my daughters in the eye and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm doing the best I can. And we'll figure this out together. But I'm always here no matter what. You can always tell me anything. You can always ask me anything, and I always love you no matter what. I'll never run away. But I'm clueless besides.
You're an absolute miracle, and you've got to become part of this program. And I love you, man. Thank you, Timmy. You're the best.
Thanks, Jerry.
Man, that's a real experience for me, and I'm humbly moved, man. Thank you very much. Listen, Trudge the Road is sponsored by Cairn Treatment Centers. Cairn's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, specializing in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. Listen, if you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call. It's 800-854-6023. Their website is caron.org. That's CARON.org. That was Timmy. I'm Jared, the sober alcoholic. Rich is standing by with more of Trudge the Road from the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry discuss sponsorship and how important it is in your recovery. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
I am a sober alcoholic. alcoholic named Jerry.
And Jerry, once again, please, for everyone, why do we do this show?
This program is dedicated to folks like Rich and myself who suffer from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol. And every bit as important, family and friends. You suffer tremendously. We know you have a lot of questions, and our goal here is to answer as many of those questions about this disease as we can, and hopefully, with the good grace of the Lord, provide a solution to this incredible dilemma, addiction.
Well, I got to tell you, what a great interview you just had with Tim.
Amazing, man. The guy is just there's just so much texture. You could feel everything he said. A wonderful interview. I can't wait to have him back.
Well, there's a reason we keep boxes of Kleenex in this room.
Amen. That's right.
Because his story really got to me, especially when he was talking about his daughter at the AA meeting, and he gave her the sanitized version, but still, nonetheless, compelling. This segment, we want to talk about sponsorship.
Yay.
And how important it is in your role of staying clean and sober. Sponsorship. And Jerry, I'm going to play the role of somebody who is questioning, maybe somebody just coming into the rooms. And the first thing I'm going to ask you is why? Why do I need a sponsor?
We need somebody to walk us through the 12 steps, someone to lead us, somebody who has already been there. For example, if we were going to Africa on a safari and we had a map, we might find our way and we might be okay. But, just a map, and I've never been to Africa and it's a safari and we're in the jungle, I might get lost. We might get lost. And what could happen is some wild hippo might eat us because we're off the trail. But if we went to that same trip to Africa and we had a guide on this safari, somebody who's already been there, our chances of getting lost diminish greatly. And the chance then to witness and experience all of the cool things along this safari becomes real practical, because you don't have to worry. Somebody's got your back, somebody who has already been there. A sponsor is the same. It's our guide through the 12 steps, this rational plan for living that is being exposed to us really for the first time. We need somebody who's been there before. And it's just like the guide on the safari. If we try to do this alone with a map, we've got a map, it's the big book, but we might get lost.
All right, so I just come into a meeting. How long do I wait before I find a sponsor, and how do I find a sponsor?
You don't wait. It's
right there, get go.
There's a couple of ways to go about it. Number one is, if there's somebody who says something at the meeting that you can identify with, that impresses you, that you feel maybe is a part of your story, that might be a good person to approach and say, would you act as my temporary sponsor? We'll start this relationship off and see if indeed we do connect, because it's all about that connectedness. And if not, while in the process of developing this relationship, we'll get to know each other so much better. So if I'm not a good fit, I'll know somebody else who is, and will guide you to that person who will be of most advantage to you in your recovery.
Now, is it to become a sponsor? Let's look at it from the other side. How long should you be in recovery before you make yourself available to become a sponsor?
You've had to have worked the steps. That's the time is really not the important thing. You've had to have worked the steps, the 12 steps of AA or NA. If you've done that, and you're sober and going to meetings and active within the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, not only can you sponsor, you should sponsor. This is your role.
But as your role as sponsor, are you responsible for answering the phone every time somebody calls, being there for them when they need you? What if you get somebody who asks you to be your sponsor, and then you start sponsoring, and you find out that it's a nonstop drama every day in the middle of the night? Yeah. I mean, how do you set boundaries?
Well, first identify why I am here. I am here to walk you through the 12 steps. That's my role. My role isn't to solve your financial problems. It isn't to solve your marital problems. It is for you to get through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because what I know for a fact, that if you do those steps, all of those issues that are so overwhelming to you at the moment will be solved. They will be solved within working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Our problem is, I want what I want when I want it. I want my finances to be okay today. I want my relationships to be okay today. And it took a while to wreck everything. It's going to take a minute to put it all back together. The Rubik's Cube example, we've used that before. You know what that is. Look at a Rubik's Cube. It's all supposed to be perfect. One side is your finances. This side is your career. This side is your retirement. This side is family. They're all supposed to, it's supposed to be just all put together. How does yours look? It's a mess.
Well, not now, but
no,
it was.
but it was a mess, you know, and that's okay. It absolutely is okay. You did not mean for your life to be in this disarray. You did not go out and purposely have this happen, but it did. It's a reality, and that's why we've got the steps and using a power greater than ourselves to solve those problems that are just too much for us. That's in the third step, where you turn that will and your life, your thinking and your actions over to that care of a power greater than yourself. And how often does it work? 100% of the time.
Now, we talk about sponsorship, and you get somebody, and you said it's to help you get through the 12 steps, but using you as an example, you've had the same sponsor now for how many years? 23 years?
23 years, 24 years.
And Burns, your sponsor. So is that to say that you haven't made it through the 12 steps, or you just need to be reminded every now and then?
I need to continually grow. I need someone there. I believe that I have this disease so bad that if I'm not putting something in front of it almost on a regular basis, I'm just in relapse mode, you know, and I need to communicate with him because he seems to have an understanding of me that is very real. And of course, he knows my record very, very well. And, you know, when I get a great idea, that's usually what he'll compare it to. Let's look at your record, Jerry. Not so much anymore. Our journey now is spiritual. It really is that we're on the same path of a spiritual journey and of spiritual growth, and that's where I think that we communicate the best. But in the beginning, he would, you know, I called him every day, and you know, what do I do now, Burns? Brush your teeth. You know, what do I do? Go to work. You know, what do I do now? Go to a meeting. What do I do? Go home. You know, go to bed. I literally had to be told on a, you know, kind of an hourly basis what to do next because I had no life skills, no ability. But there are instructions within the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous on what to do upon awakening all the way through the day. And that's where he would always take me, and still to this day, always back to the book, always to the text where the instructions are. And that for me was really important. Somebody had to say, this is what you need to do, because I know who and what I am. And if I don't have somebody doing that, not so much today, but especially then, I just wouldn't. I wouldn't because I didn't want to. It's counterintuitive. Who would? You know, but that's what we have to do. We do it, we change, we get better.
One of the questions that always comes up is, do I find a sponsor of the same gender?
Absolutely. You know, what can I do? I don't understand. You know, I need to say this out loud. I don't know what it's like for a woman to get sober. I do know this. It's more difficult than it is for me. I know that, and I respect it. The fact of the matter is, you know, label me a bad father. Okay, you're a bad father. You know, get labeled a bad mother. I mean, that's a whole different thing. There's a whole other element of issues that affect women that only women can identify with. So yes, you need to stay with the same gender.
All right, so there you go. That's a quick summary of sponsorship.
Can I just, you know, one of the things that hit me about sponsorship was actually an illustration in the newspaper, and it was a coincidence that Charles Schultz, who gave us Peanuts, you know, Charlie Brown, and Tom Landry, the great coach of the Dallas Cowboys, they passed away on the same day. Now, you know, if you're an alcoholic in recovery, if you're an alcoholic, even if you're still drinking, you certainly can identify with Charlie Brown. You know, things just never seem to go right. You know, so we know that feeling. All right, well, here's this illustration, and remember Lucy. You remember Lucy? Okay, because that plays a role in this. Here's the illustration. It's Tom Landry, arguably one of the greatest, not arguably, one of the greatest football coaches of all time, and he's holding little Charlie Brown's hand, and they're walking towards the gates of heaven, and the caption is, "Come on, boy, I'm going to teach you how to kick a football." You know, it's a beautiful thing, and that's exactly what sponsorship is. You know, I'm going to hold your hand, and that's where the destination is. We're walking to the gates of heaven, and along the way, because I have the experience, I am going to help you. I am going to show you, and we'll get by the roadblocks in life that prevent you from experiencing what we know is in front of you, and that's the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous.
If you missed any of this, or you want to catch prior shows, go to YouTube. That's where we post them up there. Matt, the producer, who, by the way, is celebrating his birthday this weekend.
Happy birthday, Matt.
Yeah, we said that in the beginning of the show. I thought I'd give him an extra plug since we didn't talk about him last week, and he kind of got all...
I heard about that,
He got all hurt by it. So happy birthday, Matt. Good job. But he posts those up there, youtube.com. Type in Trudge the Road Radio in your search engine, and boom, they'll come up. Facebook, we have a Facebook page. Just, again, in the search engine and on Facebook, Trudge the Road Radio. And like us. Twitter, we got a Twitter feed, too, TTR Show. And we want to thank everybody for for listening this week, and big thanks to Tim again for joining us.
I hope he's back, comes back soon.
Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. For Jerry, I'm Rich, and this is Trudge the Road on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you'd like to catch prior episodes, you can visit our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com and typing Trudge the Road Radio in the search engine. And keep listening for new episodes on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.